Hello friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mohadikar. In this video, I will be presenting my 13th chapter from my series, Chapters from the History of English Literature. The chapter is entitled as The Pre-Raphaelite Poetry. Pre-Raphaelite means Italian painter before Raphael. Raphael was between 1483 to 1520. The term was first used by the Brotherhood of German artists who worked together to restore art to medieval purity and simplicity. The Pre-Raphaelite movement, which was initiated by Dante Gabriel Rossetti in the mid of the 19th century, was originally not a literary but an artistic movement. Rossetti himself was a painter and a poet. He felt that contemporary painting had become too formal and unrealistic. He described to see it taken back to realism, sensuousness, and devotion to detail, which characterized the art of the Italian painter before Raphael. Led by Rossetti, some painters organized themselves in London in 1848 into a group which came to be called the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. Ruskin said that, I quote, "They imitate no pictures, they paint from nature only," I unquote. Apart from Rossetti, William Holliman Hunt, John Mellès, Thomas Ulner, James Collinson, Morris, Swinburne were the important members of this group. The Victorian writers, both in prose and poetry, were actuated by a definite moral purpose. Each had message to deliver. Poetry became intellectual and its artistic vitality, its artistic significance was crushed. Pre-Raphaelite poetry protested against this materialism and the intellectualism of the age. It emphatically proclaims that art had no connection with morality, science, or philosophy. It believed in art for art's sake. The Pre-Raphaelite poets revolted against the orthodox Victorian type of poetry represented by Tennyson. Their poetry is full of medievalism and Hellenism to every important characteristic of romanticism. In the face of doubt and materialism, they created an atmosphere of romance and wonder. Their inspiration often came of classical writers and classical mythology. Thus, the Pre-Raphaelite movement was against the didacticism of Victorian poetry, and it was a rebirth of romanticism in painting and poetry. The aim of Pre-Raphaelite poet was to have a genuine ideas to express, to sympathize with what is direct seriousness and heartfelt in art, to study nature attentively, to avoid what is conventional and materialistic, and finally to produce in poetry what the painters produced in painting before Raphael. So this was their aim. Thus the medievalism, naturalism, archaism, gaudy and colorful style, music and neo-romanticism were the hallmark of these poets. In poetry, the movement came in the shape of revolt against contemporary poetry of kind of Tennyson's and in the immediate mundane problems of contemporary society. To justify their ideas, the Brotherhood started a periodical publication, The Journal. As an organized group, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood ceased to exist beyond the year 1850s. Let us now consider the salient features of Pre-Raphaelite poetry. First is break with tradition. The Pre-Raphaelites revolted against the over-concern of poets like Tennyson with contemporary socio-political problems. They were the votaries of arts for art's sake. They had no morality to preach and no reforms to introduce through the medium of poetry. Art for them was their religion. Then medievalism. This dream world is often provided by the Middle Ages, which had exercised a strong hold on the minds of some romantics like Coleridge, Keats and Scott. The Pre-Raphaelite poets like Rossetti, Morris were fascinated by the romance, chivalry, gorgeousness, mystery, and supernaturalism of the Middle Ages. Then there was devotion to detail. The pre-Raphaelites are concerned more about particulars than about generals. Rossetti's poems, A Last Confession and The Blessed Damozel, abound in both the visual and auditory details. I quote, "She had 3 lilies in her hand, and the stars in her hair were 7." I unquote. Then there was sensuousness. Most of the pre-Raphaelites were painters as well as poets. That explains much of the sensuousness of their poetry as well as their loving concern for detail. Rossetti thinks and feels in pigments. Excessive recourse to, we can say, colorful decoration sometimes becomes cloying. Cloying means to feel disgusting. The best example of it is the poem A Birthday by Christina Rossetti. Then we can call it a fleshly school of poetry. The prudish Victorian could not stand the vulgar sensuousness of pre-Raphaelite. The pre-Raphaelite made no bones about the exhibition of their voluptuous tendencies. Swinburne, Rossetti were quite daring in the description of the beauties of human body. Naturally, their poetry shocked the hypocrites of the Victorian age. Then finally there was meter and music. Pre-Raphaelite poetry is rich not only in pictorial qualities but also in music. The trouble is that they go to excess in both. So the excessive use of alliteration makes it annoying. So this was all about pre-Raphaelite poetry and the salient features of pre-Raphaelite poetry. Thanks friends.